accepting it as a way of life was when I was reflecting in university, and I saw what I did previously, and I saw where I would go 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And then I looked at, if I had children, raising them in a society, how can I instill, principles to my children that I can protect them from corruption, protect them in such a way that they have a reason to act in this way. And when I started putting the puzzles together, every time I turned away from Islam, I felt something was missing. I felt that there was a piece missing. I felt that I'm taking a risk. And just as how I failed in my actions, I knew that my offspring will fail in their actions, and so would their offspring. I knew I had to do something or learn something that would protect it. And Islam was the only way that I knew it had the answer for. Every situation that I would come across, it had an answer for it. Not because we needed an answer for everything. And I think sometimes we get lost in that concept that I need an answer for this, I need an answer for that. No, we need an understanding of what the answer means. And it may not have a direct answer to our questions, but it gives us a principle of guidance. That if you morally conduct yourself in this way, these are the results that you will get. And this is the results of your actions, and this will help you in regard of this situation, right? It was almost like a business plan, but it was a plan on how to live your life. And I was very attached to nature and attached to what I saw in terms of how Allah has created the sun, the moon, the plants, and the trees, and the whole animal kingdom. Then I'm like, what? This fits into the pattern of life. This is not something ambiguous. If you look at the everything around you, and you want to apply religion to what's around you, you'll never find a better puzzle than Islam. And then I'm like, wait a minute, if it applies to the world around us, then why doesn't it apply to us, right? That's when I'm like, what, this makes so much more sense. Now I need to find out how I need to practice it, and which way do I need to follow, and how should I embrace it, right? I grew up with Sunni, Shias, Ismailis. I knew people from different sects. I had someone tell me, just be Muslim. It doesn't matter what sect you are. That's all created afterwards. It doesn't matter. Just be Muslim. I had friends who influenced me in Sunni Islam and Shia Islam. I found all of it to be beautiful, because at the end of the day, it's all teachings of the Prophet, and everything that the Prophet said is beautiful. But what is perfect, right? Because Allah has made this world perfect in terms of what we learn from it and what we take to the afterlife. He has made it perfect. So there's something that had to be within it that was absolutely perfect. So that's when I had to really understand, I can't make a decision on Shia Islam, or I can't make a decision on Sunni Islam unless I know both of them. Unless I can see the evidence of each one in this world outside of ourselves, outside of a book. Because, I know there's lots of hadiths in Sunni Islam that prove, their belief. And there's lots of hadiths of Shia Islam that prove Shia Islam in the Shia hadith books, right? So I can't use a book to say, oh, well, what? Because I picked up one book and it tells me to be in this way, so I'm going to follow it, because you could find it somewhere else. So in the same way I thought and reflected about coming from Christianity, Islam, I knew I had to continue in that reflection. If I get stuck in the dogma of looking for it in a book, I'm going to miss out. So I had to reflect a lot, because that was one of my major struggles after becoming Muslim. When I was in that phase about reflecting, I had people pull me from different directions. So I needed to make a decision for myself and something that was going to save me for the future. So I was in engineering, so I started using principles of engineering and try to understand it, and principles of life. So one of the things what I learned was load bearing. So if you have an axis and you have a load bearing, the most strongest load bearing will be the one that's closest to the axis. So I found out, wait a minute, so if I'm going to apply that in my religion, I had to use who was the most closest to the Prophet. Because why? Because that'd be the strongest load. And whatever you put on that load would bear the most. Then I looked at, okay, let's look at other sciences. I looked at politics. And when I reflected on Christianity, I've noticed one very common element was that politics was always present in every prophet. If you look at Habil and Qabil, their sacrifice, one was accepted, one was rejected. It was a political statement regarding why is mine rejected, right? If you look at Musa and Pharaoh, Ibrahim and regarding the idols of worship. But what really struck me was Jesus and how he was battling the people of the temple who claimed themselves as to be the followers of God, and truly he was the follower of God. He was the prophet of that time. He came with the most blessed of teachings. Yes, there was already an established religion through other prophets, but he came to perfect it in their own due time. And they rejected it because they felt that they already had a prophetic teaching. So I'm like, that was a prophet against politics. And I knew that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also had that. And whatever message he delivered will have that. So I had to differentiate between the prophetic teachings of Prophet Muhammad and the political reasons of taking that and implementing it, and differentiate between the two. Before I had a chance to pick Imam Ali alayhi salam, I knew that there had to be someone perfect to carry on that message, right? Because I felt like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose a perfect being, if he was to choose somebody, he too would choose someone perfect. Because if Allah has said that he is the perfect man, then wouldn't we assume that his choices are perfect? And if he chose someone that is imperfect, that means the Prophet himself is imperfect. That means also billah, that Allah himself is imperfect. So I knew that perfection had to continue. So one of the first books I've read outside of the philosophy was Ali the Magnificent. And that was it. That was the icing on the cake. When I read about him and just the minute things that he used to do, and I realized my friend in his actions was a reflection of of Imam Ali's actions. And there are certain points that I've still today, gives me shivers. When Imam Ali alayhi salam used to blow out the candle when someone used to come to him for personal reasons, and he used to light his own personal candle instead of lighting the candle that was provided to them from the government, for the government. That was amazing. A person who is so particular about differentiating the expense for himself and expense, provided by the Islamic government at that time. That was a role model, and how we should be, right? Even you misuse our parents' things for ourselves when it's supposed to be shared amongst the family as a whole. So once I started delving into his teachings and his practices, I knew at that time I had to be, a follower of him. And then I learned about Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his sacrifice, and that brought me reflections about my parents' sacrifice in Sri Lanka, and what it really means to sacrifice, and what does it really mean to give everything so that something can be brought forth from it. It's almost like a farmer that puts his seeds in the ground. If you think about it, you're putting yourself in the earth that you walk on, so that it comes from nothing and comes and gives life to plants, to trees, to to provide for the community, livestock. So essentially, he himself giving, himself and his children and his, his family, his close companions, is like that farmer who sows the seeds, and so much grows from it. And it's not only for himself, it's actually to provide for the whole community. And I felt like Imam Hussein did that. He gave himself so he can provide for all of humanity. And that was important. And it just grew, and it just so much light, grew from within me. And I knew this was the way. At the point when I was selected to be Muslim, or chose to be Muslim, it wasn't really a choice, it was just a feeling that just came to me from within. That point was, I think, one night while I was sleeping, and I felt this heavy burden on my chest. I remember at that night I was praying, and I was praying. First, I started praying to Jesus. I'm like, what is this heavy? It feels like someone was sitting on me, and this heavy feeling on my chest. And I'm like, what is this? I was praying like, Jesus, please save me from this. Right? It's just choking me. This is making it very difficult for me. And it was that feeling wouldn't go away. And then I said, oh Muhammad, if this religion is right, God, if Muhammad is the prophet and is a religion that I should follow, and then give me a sign and remove this, this weight off of me. And immediately it just left, and I felt like when it left, it shook the house. And I was awake that night. I didn't sleep, and I was just thinking, what was this? I had to submit, to God. I had to submit to this religion because it saved me from whatever this was, or it made me confirm my belief. And that was the point of my shahada. And that's when I felt like this was my shahada, that, I became Muslim at this point. And from that moment, when I was learning, about Islam, it took me a few months to really understand between Sunni and Shia. I didn't want to go into a book. I didn't want to read, the different hadith. I did eventually. I've read, Sahih Bukhari, a lot of Sahih Bukhari. I read a lot of the hadiths from Imam Ali alayhi salam, from the Prophet, relating to Imam Ali, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, relating to the Ahlul Bayt. But I felt I needed to first understand what I'm reading and what I'm looking for. So I was looking for some kind of guidance in who the Prophet has left to be our guidance. And to be honest, you can't choose being Muslim without following a certain path, because you're going to pray, and however you pray is going to be based off of two teachings, really, either following Shia Islam or following Sunni Islam. You can't pray and say that I'm praying as a Muslim, because it's represented by a sect. Even the Prophet himself says that my religion will be broken into 73 sects, one of which would be correct. So I knew you had to choose a way to follow. What was perfect? When you reflect about the Torba and what it represents, we're not prostrating to a clay per se. We're prostrating to something that represents where we came from and where we go back into. And it was a good symbol for me, because everything is a symbol from God. The sun, the moon was a symbol. The moon was a reflection of the sun. And, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that, I am the moon and I am the sun and Ali is the moon, it was beautiful for me because you know what? During the day we have guidance, and during the